Did this start?
Mm-hmm.
It did?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم افتح علينا فتحا مبينا وارزقنا رزقا مباركا كريما. اللهم ارحمنا برحمة تغنينا بها عن رحمة يسيرة. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today we'll be talking about the subject of nasiha. Do you need to?
He was just asking me.
All right. So, this subject of nasiha is a very essential, subject in our faith, and unfortunately, it's one of those probably most misunderstood topics in Islam because of how we came to define it. So, if I were to ask you, and I heard earlier when I asked you guys, what do you think we're talking about today? You guys threw the word nasiha, right? It's a commonly used word, so even those who don't speak Arabic have come to understand the word. It's became kind of common verbiage, nasiha, and we typically translate it as what? Advice, right? So we're going to come to see that it's a much more comprehensive notion than the limited understanding that we've adopted. I'm here to state to you at the beginning of this session that if this subject is understood and practiced, and if we strive to kind of cultivate a better awareness of and integrate into our lives on a daily basis, no joke when I say that our lives and our relationships will be transformed. This is a very powerful subject. And it's a sad thing that we do not understand it, or that we understand a very understand a very limited aspect of the subject of nasiha in Islam. If we were to talk about advice today, giving advice and receiving advice, our topic would be different. That's one aspect of nasiha. So let me just begin by asking, and please share, even if it's something tiny. When I use or throw at you the word nasiha or advice, what comes to mind? Like, think of a situation, something that happened where we either dispensed or received advice. How was it used? What was it used for? What is our common understanding of nasiha or advice? What comes to mind instantly? I can share one thing, but I'll wait for your input first. When do we typically use the word advice?
When someone is doing something wrong.
May Allah bless you. You just pinpointed the very understanding that we commonly have. Is that it's a matter of nasiha, is a matter of finding mistakes with someone or observing a mistake that someone has made and then doing what?
Telling them about it.
Exactly. Informing them about it, not necessarily correcting it, but informing them about it, dispensing nasiha, advice to them, in the interest of getting them to change it. So you notice what we focused on. Bint has mentioned this, finding a mistake. So it assumes there is a mistake that needs to be corrected, a hole that needs to be plugged. And if I were to ask you the next question, shall we address that? Is that really the definition of nasiha in Islam? Is it not? Is it bigger? Is it smaller? Second is, why does it typically evoke negative feelings? What's our common experience with nasiha with others? Are we willing? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because it brings criticism for the person.
Alright, so are we like gun-ho on nasiha? It's like, I can't wait to receive nasiha from people today. I'm going to start my morning looking for everyone to give me nasiha. No, we don't, right? Why? Because our understanding of nasiha and the way we practice nasiha is that it comes down to what? Finding mistakes and criticisms. I want to ask you, brothers and sisters, who amongst us can't wait to have their mistakes identified by other people and to hear about it? No one wants to. Because how do people typically advise you about your mistakes? In a critical way, isn't it? Right? Do you recall the last time that someone really gave you advice that annoyed you? Can someone share that? I can tell you the last time I gave advice that annoyed someone. And I know exactly why I annoyed them. And I typically we do this with who? Where do we find ourselves most comfortable to give harsh advice and critical advice?
Your family.
Family. Because we're comfortable with them, right? And we feel like that we're empowered, we have the right, we can get away with it, and it's actually a good thing, they need to hear it. Can you remember the last time that someone shared advice with you that annoyed the heck out of you? Or just perhaps angered you? Perhaps even wrecked the relationship with that person? Do you want to share? I'm going to share something that just recently actually annoyed me. And it's funny that we get annoyed by other human beings and we get bothered and they get under our skin. And we know that the behavior, we can identify the behavior that does that harm to us, and then we go do it to others. Isn't that funny? So check this out. I recently lost, I believe my keys. I forgot what it was, 2 weeks ago. It really, I was pretty upset. I forgot what it was. I think it was my keys. I lost them in the house. I was getting nervous. I needed to leave, and I needed to find my keys, and I couldn't find my keys. So I'll never forget my father. While I was in the process of trying to search, my wife is helping me, my kids are helping me. My father looks at all of this, and I adore my father. He stands up and he says, "What's going on?" And my wife is telling me, "Oh, Tarif lost his keys." And he's like, "Yeah, he should not forget the next time, or he should be careful next time." I'm like, in my mind, I cannot talk to my father, of course, I'm like, is that really what I want to hear right now? Is that Tarif always forgets and Tarif needs to remember, right? Not to lose his keys? I'm like, of course, right? It's how does that help me in this particular situation right now, but to make it more painful, right? Of course, I didn't say anything. We need to be respectful of our parents. Fast forward, what do I do to next week, the following week? My wife ends up losing something. And guess what I do? I'm like looking at her and like, "Sanam, you should not have misplaced your bag." And she's looking at me like, "Is that what I need to hear right now? I know I misplaced my bag, right? The last thing I want to hear right now is someone telling me you messed up." And wallah, I count myself and I'm like, you should have known better. Especially at a time when someone is worried, concerned, really, they don't need to have someone to come to them and remind them of the obvious. What does it serve? In that moment, I feel that perhaps my frustration, whatever it is, might have been kind of quenched by this desire to say you're wrong, right? And unfortunately, that's our experience with dispensing or receiving advice. So this is our subject today, brothers and sisters, and it's a big deal. But I'm gonna stretch it out, expand the scope of it a little bit, and apply the understanding, the Islamic understanding to this subject, and how do we cultivate a better practice of nasiha in general, and how do we come to a point in our lives where we understand that it's an indispensable part of our faith, and that it's an indispensable part of our growth, that we desperately need nasiha, that we owe each other good nasiha, that we cannot live without it, and how do we now come to the next level where we can become better dispensers of nasiha, because it's a right that others have on us, and it's a right that I have on you and you have on me. We owe each other good nasiha. When we fail to give good nasiha, we're going to talk shortly about this, there are serious consequences. The final question I want to ask, or a couple of questions, is A, how do we give that nasiha in a manner that achieves its goals? And what should the goals of nasiha be? And also, the final question that I'm going to ask is, do we have people in our lives that we can identify as good, what we'd say in Arabic, nasih. Nasih is not big. Like people, funny because nasih can mean big, but in this context it means someone who can give you advice and counsel. It's a very serious thing that that we don't have in our lives people that we identify as trustworthy dispensers of advice or counsel, people who can counsel us and mentor us and help us grow, help us see the shortcomings in our lives, or not necessarily just shortcomings, areas of growth, right? Most people walk around in this life without having that one person or multiple people in their lives. So they end up seeking advice or counsel from who? People who cannot give it, right? And what happens? When we're searching for someone who can help us in our lives, help us understand things better, answer questions that we don't have, so on and so forth, or seek advice from. You're going to seek it from the wrong people. And what happens then if you're emotionally vulnerable and you know when you're in emotional need and you desperately need that someone in your life to give you that recommendation or that advice, and you seek it from someone who might give you what you're who might give you what you want to hear, right? It can end up costing you severely, right? Can't you remember a time in your life when you sought advice from someone? Or someone gave you advice and it ended up being a horrific thing that cost you, right? I mean, how often, brothers and sisters, do we, let's say we have a family situation, right? And let's say your parents did something to you that you found to be hurtful. You go to a friend of yours and you complain about your issue. And I see this not just with parents, like let's say in a marriage situation, that always happens. A spouse is upset with their spouse. They come to their friend, complaining about their spouse. And what does the spouse say about, to the friend who was hurt by the wife or by the husband? I can't believe they did that to you. You're gonna let them get away with this, right? You need to put your foot down, right? And now in the heat of the moment, when you're really upset, and someone comes along to remind you that, you know what, that behavior was very insulting. You should never let somebody do that to you. What is that going to do to the person? You're going to go home and do what? Right? Pick a fight with that person. And I can tell you, from my experience, I've seen this happen so much. Where people, especially married people or children, going to their friends, complaining about a family member, right? And that person ends up giving them the most destructive advice. And maybe that person is well assuming and well intentioned, but they don't know what they're talking about. Or they really want to see you suffer. How often do we talk to someone and you can sense in the way they talk to you they don't want your best. They almost want you to do the wrong thing, right? Because maybe inside of them there's jealousy. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't know it, but it's there. So the question of identifying the right people in our lives to ask advice from or counsel from is a crucial one. And we should never be in the business of asking the wrong people or people that we don't know, because they can actually offer you, especially in vulnerable moments when you might believe what they're saying, the worst advice in your life that can actually destroy your life. They might actually make you feel worse about yourself. Go ahead, Binta.
I know something that my sister said once was that, if you're having a conflict in your marriage, try your best not to mention it to your parents or to people very, very close to you, because otherwise, imagine the conflict is hashed between you and your husband or you and your spouse. Well, that person still has a negative view of your spouse, whereas someone who's more neutral would be a better person to ask, because they're more neutral. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of wisdom, right? Part of wisdom in knowing who to seek advice from. People that are emotionally tied to the situation are going to be having perhaps clouded judgment, or they might carry some bitter feelings, as you've said. They're too close to the equation, and too close. Let's say it's the father or mother of a son, as you said. Well, I love my child. I don't want him to be hurt by this daughter-in-law, right? So what happens? They end up getting, rattled and angered by the situation. So they end up fueling the negativity and end up perhaps wrecking their relationship. Absolutely. And part of it is also just the secrecy of it. That's another thing to protect and safeguard a relationship that often gets breached in our communities, in our relationship. I can tell you right now, marriage, building marriage 101. Remember this in your future when you get into your, that relationship, inshallah, may Allah bless it for you. Ensure that you and your spouse are on the same page as far as the secrecy of the marriage. If you think, and this should be one of the criteria for who you look for in, as a spouse. If you believe that that person cannot protect a secret in that relationship that you have with them, don't marry them. Because automatically you've opened the door for the destruction of the marriage and the harm of the marriage. That if that person is going to take your secrets and share it with others, that wrecks the marriage, automatically. But beyond this is needing to understand or be intelligent about who to ask advice from. Now, let me take it back to something that perhaps many of us might find, inshallah, enlightening and perhaps odd. That nasiha in Islam is perhaps, in a limited way, it is about dispensing advice, but it's a much bigger concept. It's a much more comprehensive concept. It's equivalent to Islam itself. We take this from a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said, "Ad-deenun nasiha." Ad-deenun nasiha. What is deen? Deen is religion, right? He literally equated religion with nasiha. So the companions asked him, "O Prophet of Allah, nasiha to who?" Then he said, "To Allah." Think about this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Deen, our faith, is nasiha." Then he said, "Nasiha is to Allah, to His book, to the Messenger ﷺ, to the leaders of the community, and to the community." Well, how can you give advice to Allah? How can you give advice to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? How can you give advice to the book of Allah? How can you give advice to the leaders and to the community? This is a big subject. We don't have time to go over every one of those things. So let me tell you the definition of it, and then you'll understand this hadith. First of all, the very hadith indicates to you that it's equivalent to Islam. That's why I began this whole session by saying, if we understand this, we understand our faith and the goals of our faith, we understand the principles of our faith, we understand the ultimate objectives of our faith, and we'll be able to really cultivate better relationships and better communities and better families, if we understand nasiha. Nasiha, brothers and sisters, let's look at the linguistic root of it. It comes from the verb nasaha. Nasaha. And I'll give you a usage of that in the Arabic language that unfortunately has been lost. Like in modern Arabic, we don't, colloquial Arabic, we don't use this word in this context. We use it actually in a limited way to mean give advice or receive advice. But let me give you something from classical Arabic. They say nasaha, did nasiha to the honey. You're like, what? Honey needs nasiha? How do you advise honey? Honey, literally. How do you give advice to honey? I'll tell you how. Nasaha, to apply nasiha to the honey in Arabic language means to purify from wax. Let me give you another usage. Nasaha thawb. Thawb, the dress. Did nasiha to the dress. What does that mean? How do you do nasiha to the dress? Do you see now I'm already like taking it beyond the context or the usage that we commonly have in our minds. What do you mean you're going to do nasiha to a dress? It means to sew it. What happens when you sew? You take something, a fabric, and you sew it together. You take the threads and you construct a shirt. What you've done is literally put something, turn it into something, first of all, beautiful, nice, usable, and you fill the holes. You know what it means, brothers and sisters, linguistically? It literally means to be sincere with something, to purify something. So nasiha means to purify. Purity. In a limited way, a limited definition of it, of advice, actually is an aspect of nasiha. It's a totality. It's a comprehensive term that indicates or that includes in it every aspect of good that you can intend or seek for another human being. I'm going to repeat. It's a totality that includes in it every aspect of good that you can intend, think, desire, or do for another human being.